Hi everybody, Corinne Smith here, avid John Denver fan, continuing my series reviewing John Denver's albums in chronological order. And this time we're going to address 3 albums from the years 1971 and 1972. Last time, if you remember, link above if you didn't get to see it, in part 1 we covered 6 albums, 3 from the Mitchell Trio and 3 of John's first albums, Rhymes and Reasons, Take Me to Tomorrow, and Whose Garden Was This? This time we're up to 1971 and 1972. Let's jump right in. April 1971, John released Poems, Prayers, and Promises. Has 12 songs on it. John wrote 6 of them. Now, friends, we're cooking with gas. This is the sound we associate with John Denver. What do we have here? Poems, Prayers, and Promises, My Sweet Lady, Take Me Home Country Roads, Sunshine on My Shoulders, Around and Around, which is one of my personal favorites, by the way, and a plea for native rights called Wooden Indian. By June, just 2 months after this album's release, Take Me Home Country Roads was on the top 40 charts, was getting tons of airplay, spent 14 weeks on the charts and spent 2 weeks at number 1, and now of course the song is simply legendary worldwide. Sunshine on My Shoulders took a little longer to become a hit. As you remember, John specifically wrote it for the sentimental TV movie called Sunshine, which was only just in production at this time. The movie wouldn't air for another 2.5 years on Friday, November 9th, 1973, and then it was powerful. It was the most watched made-for-TV movie in history at the time, and its popularity led to the song Sunshine on My Shoulders hitting the charts in February 1974. The song spent 13 weeks there and was even number 1 for a week. Now, if you were around and listened to the radio back then, when the movie and the song were popular, then you may remember that the song was cut down for radio airplay. The full album cut of Sunshine on My Shoulders runs for 5 minutes and 10 seconds. It starts with the chorus, then it has a first verse, then it repeats the chorus, second verse, repeats the chorus again, and then the last line of the chorus is repeated in full almost twice and held over a 4-chord progression until the last chord is strummed, which doesn't sound unusual or complicated, but it is a slow song too, so it takes time. Well, that was far too long for contemporary radio, top 40 radio, far too long. So the short version took out the second verse and the chorus that came after it. So all you had was chorus, verse, verse, chorus, and the extra lines of the chorus and the final ending. If you hear the song on classic kinds of stations today, listen for the difference. I think you may still hear the short version out there. And they thought we wouldn't notice. By the way, if you're singing Sunshine on My Shoulders yourself, you do know the easy way for remembering the lyric progression, right? The main words are in alphabetical order. Day, song, tale, wish. If I had a day that I could give you, if I had a song that I could sing for you, if I had a tale that I could tell you, if I had a wish that I could wish for you. Thank you, John. I don't know if you deliberately put them in alphabetical order, but it sure does help those of us who want to sing along, okay? You remember day, song, tale, wish. In the short version, it's only day and song. There's also a progression in hierarchy, if you think about it, from the tangible, the day and the song, to the intangible, the tale and the wish. So there may be a lot more going on in Sunshine on My Shoulders than you may have at first considered. So anyway, back to this album. In addition to John's songs here, and a wonderful photo of him, he's got some covers. Let It Be from Lennon and McCartney. He performs it on a 12-string guitar instead of on the piano, so it does sound a little different. And he does do it without a grand instrumental middle verse. Still pretty empowering. Then there's a song called Junk, which is another McCartney tune that appeared on Paul McCartney's own first solo album of 1970. This version of Junk is the one with lyrics. McCartney also recorded a longer instrumental version called Sing Along Junk, just instrumental, that also appeared on that solo album. And now it's time for another cultural reference. That instrumental, McCartney's Sing Along Junk, was used in the movie Jerry Maguire when Jerry and Dorothy have gone on their first date and they come back and they're standing on the porch trying to get intimate. That's when you hear Sing Along Junk. Go watch that movie again or call up that scene if you don't believe me. McCartney's Sing Along Junk is the music for that scene. First time I saw that movie, I thought, hey, wait a minute, that's from a John Denver album. No. Junk with the lyrics is on here. Junk, the instrumental, is the one that was used in that movie and was Paul McCartney's original. Anyway, also on here is a cover of Fire and Rain from James Taylor. Amazingly enough, it was a new song back then, had just hit the charts the previous fall in 1970, and this album came out in April 1971. John does a good job with Fire and Rain, creates his own picking pattern for it, so it doesn't copy James entirely. It's still nice, though. Kind of difficult to remember a time when Fire and Rain was a brand new song. We have 2 additional songs on here, one on each side. Gospel Changes is on side 1. That's an interesting one. And on side 2, we have I Guess He'd Rather Be in Colorado by Bill and Taffy Danoff, who wrote it about their friend John. Actually, those two had also written most of Take Me Home Country Roads. And they sing backup on some of the other songs on here. John sings and plays I Guess He'd Rather Be in Colorado about himself. Now, another cultural reference. Whenever I hear that song, it actually takes me back to prime time television of the day, to February 24th, 1974, when an episode called The Colorado Cattle Caper appeared on the TV series McCloud, starring Dennis Weaver. If you remember it, or go ahead, call it up electronically. About 10.5 minutes in, the action shifts from New York City to rural Colorado, and you hear John, in his role as Deputy Dewey Cobb, in the background singing, I Guess He'd Rather Be in Colorado, to set the scene for the action to take place there. Anyway, it's a good song, although I always thought it didn't end quite right because it doesn't have a good final chord. And additionally, Dennis Weaver was interested in environmental issues, as was John, and they were friends in the cause. At the last WinStar Foundation Symposium in Aspen, Colorado in 1995, Dennis Weaver was there, and I even got a chance to talk with him and his lovely wife. Very nice people. I'm so glad I had a chance to chat with them. Anyway, just that one song takes me to the TV show in 1974 and then to the conference 21 years later. Memories. Last selection on the album is John's rendition of The Box, an anti-war poem by Kendrew Lascelles. The poet had performed it on the Smothers Brothers show earlier in 1971, and John asked him if he could use it on this album, and he agreed. John gives a powerful reading of it. It seems as though maybe John liked to recite long and rhyming poems that used imagery and metaphor to address issues. I remember 2 other poems that he recited by memory at those WinStar Foundation's conferences. One was written by Joseph Malins and was called A Fence or an Ambulance. It's also known as The Ambulance Down in the Valley, about the choice to be either proactive or reactive in any given situation. I'm going to give you a link below to John reciting The Fence or the Ambulance. I think he also did The Calf Path by Walter Foss, about the dangers of conforming to whatever pattern somebody else has set in the past. I don't find any online recording of John reciting that one, though. Nevertheless, he must have had a good memory because he did those without notes. Album Poems, Prayers, and Promises begins the familiar sound of John's music. This album has a lot of good stuff on it that really helped further John's popularity and reputation. You can listen to this album over and over again and not get tired of it. Or at least I can listen to this album over and over again and not get tired of it. It can be tearful. when you hear the song Poems, Prayers, and Promises and the line about life and how he's going to hate to see it end. All right, next up is Aerie, which was released in November of 1971. It was probably the first time a lot of us heard the word Aerie or saw the word Aerie, A-E-R-I-E. And that's the way I've always pronounced it. I've heard John pronouncing it Aerie. Dictionary says you can do it either way. And of course, the word refers to an eagle's nest, or the nest of a raptor, high up on a tree or on a rocky ridge. And just the look of this album cover alone is important, because it starts to link John with his love and respect for nature and Colorado and eagles and the American West. The others, so far, had not done that. There are 12 songs on here. 5 of them were written by John. Starwood and Aspen, of course, is about his new home there in Colorado. All of My Memories is a slow song that's also about the concept of home. Tools is an acoustic finger-picking ditty with one verse about a baby rabbit that John and Annie tried to take care of unsuccessfully at one point. 60-second Song for a Bank was an assignment to write a jingle that used the tagline, "May we help you today." The star of the show here is the Eagle and the Hawk. John wrote it for a television show about birds of prey. It's a powerful song about powerful animals, perfectly suited for the subject matter and for how John connected with it. On this back cover, he's pictured with the eagle, and the lyrics to the song are printed here in his own handwriting. And usually, if you know how to play 12-string guitar, you can't help but get out your own guitar and march that E chord all the way down to get that effect at the beginning of the song. Here, though, in the first recording of it, you can barely hear the guitar on the introduction, and it's actually subtle instead of powerful. I think the producers could have approached this one a little differently back then, especially since now I think it's an important and amazing song. It's still good to hear this one, though. All right, so Aerie also has 4 cover songs. Every Day was made popular by Buddy Holly and the Crickets in the fall of 1957. John's is an interesting interpretation. Casey's Last Ride was written by Chris Christopherson. It's a slow and mournful song that for some reason tends to stick in your head well after you hear it. And then there's the John Prine song, Blow Up Your TV, Spanish Pipe Dream, which has a country vibe to it and also tends to stick in your head. And then there's the Steve Goodman song called City of New Orleans. The more popular version, of course, was done by Arlo Guthrie. That one came out the following year, 1972. Song's been covered numerous times in numerous languages around the world. John's version here bounces along kind of as if you're riding the rails yourself. Now, let's have an odd aside about the city of New Orleans. If you remember the 1975 Evening with John Denver, which we're not going to discuss in length because we're not up to 1975 yet, there is a substantial difference between the vinyl copy and the CD copy. Last time I also mentioned this format thing, where the newer formats can also add things like text and photos and even additional songs that didn't appear on the original album. Okay, so on the CD copy of Evening with John Denver, there are 6 additional songs that didn't appear on the vinyl. They were recorded live at Red Rocks in Colorado and not in Los Angeles. And of those 6 songs, 1 is a live version of John singing City of New Orleans, and he talks about it, and he talks about how Arlo Guthrie beat him to the punch on that one. It's only on the CD version of In Evening with John Denver. And again, this is not the only instance where the newer format adds things. So if you are building your own physical collection of these albums, you may want to pay attention to these formats and what they actually have on them, okay? If you're collecting in vinyl or cassette or CD or, God bless you, 8-track tape, you would do well to check, okay? Check between formats, see what the differences are. You've been politely warned about that. Now, are we going back to Aerie? We're going back to Aerie. We also find 3 songs by Bill Danoff. One of them was co-written with Taffy Nivert. Danoff. Friends with You has a really catchy chorus that you should recognize as soon as you hear it. She Won't Let Me Fly Away is a bouncy, bluesy number. Readjustment Blues is slower in a minor key. It's an anti-war protest song written from the perspective of a returned Vietnam vet. And John sings it with a lot of passion and anger. Remember, this is 1971. You have to remember what was going on at the time. So we have quite a variety of selections on here. Again, I think this album is important to John's legacy because of its symbolic connection to nature, to eagles, to the American West, and specifically to the eagle and the hawk, in spite of the subdued nature of the guitar sound on it. It's also his first album to go gold. I think, at the time, I had the sheet music book that went along with this album. Do you remember those sheet music books? I peeked through my boxes of John Denver stuff. I didn't see it immediately. I have bigger compilations of John's songs, music books. I don't know where the one for this album went. Maybe I gave it away. Why would I have done that? I don't know. Maybe I'll find it and show it in a future program. Anyway, I know a John Denver fan who thinks she has all of them. All of the music books for all of the albums, as many as there can be. These are really rare. So if you have any of them, please let your heirs know that they are really rare, and I'm not even kidding here, okay? So I'm not sure I still have that, but what I do have is a painting that somebody made for me back in the mid-70s. Her name was Bonnie, and she was, how am I going to show this? Okay, here's part of it. All right, let me get away from here, and I'll get out of the picture maybe. Here's this painting that my friend Bonnie gave me. She was a sister of one of my high school classmates. She obviously made this for me right around that same time. I don't know whatever happened to Bonnie. We lost touch. I don't even know if she's still around. From what I can hear, her family doesn't even know. Anyway, she deliberately changed the words, all that we can be is not what we are. She said it was more existential that way. So I don't know if, hey, Bonnie, if you're around and you happen to be watching this, thank you again for this beautiful painting. You gave it to me like 47 years ago. And yes, all that we can be is not what we are, from the Eagle and the Hawk and from Aerie. And maybe we'll just put this right back here. Aerie. And then, when I was in college in the 70s, in 1976, I took a basic art class for educators along with my fellow library science majors, and we had to learn how to do calligraphy and all kinds of other things. And we also had an assignment where we were supposed to cut out a complicated image by hand and then successfully dry mount it onto poster board without any wrinkles or glitches showing. So for that assignment, ever in John Denver mode, I submitted this piece where I did the calligraphy. See how we do that? I did the calligraphy. I cut out the eagle from a magazine article, and it's the eagle and the hawk. I live in high country in rocky cathedrals that reach to the sky. The blue ink that I used originally is kind of fading. I usually have this hanging in the guest room. I did get an A in this class. So thank you, Inez Baker at Clarion State College in Clarion, Pennsylvania, for forcing me to do this. Okay, this is what fans do, guys. At least this is what some fans do. Anyway, moving on. I think you know what's coming. If you're a JD fan, you know what's coming. The first John Denver album I ever bought. It's the one that attracted me to him. The one that sealed the deal for me from that moment on, Rocky Mountain High, which came out September 1972. I'm surprised that I haven't worn this album out, although all the edges of this cardboard are kind of raggedy. You know this album. I learned how to play guitar because of this. I got wire rim glasses because of John, and on and on and on. Aerie started the connection of John with the American West. Rocky Mountain High confirmed and furthered that reputation. John, the Western Mountains, the scenery, together always. Okay, that's the message here. It comes through loud and clear, both in the visuals and in the songs. There are 7 individual songs on here, and then there's the 5-part season suite. John wrote all but 3 of these songs, so let's start with the other ones first. They include Darcy Pharaoh, which is a mournful Romeo and Juliet type of ballad, and then 2 covers, Mother Nature's Son by Lennon and McCartney, sure is appropriate for John to sing about somebody who is Mother Nature's son. And then there's Paradise from John Prine, which is about the ramifications of the coal business in Kentucky. So you can already tell that nature and the environmental message are central to this album. And actually, even Darcy Pharaoh is set in California and Nevada, even though it sounds like an old English ballad, because that's where the Carson Valley Plain is, named after Kit Carson. Yeah. So, of John's own songs, For Baby for Bobby is on here. Now, I mentioned it in our first program when it first appeared on a Mitchell Trio album, Violets at Dawn. It's a little slower on Rocky Mountain High than it was on that earlier album, when he had 2 other voices in that trio to join him. Goodbye Again starts side 2 of this album. This is what the third and final piece to the puzzle that John said was the accidental and coincidental jet plane trilogy that he considered the 3 songs eventually to go together: Leaving on a Jet Plane, Follow Me, and then Goodbye Again. Prisoners is a song that I really liked the sound of as soon as I heard it. The subject matter is not completely pretty. Josie is a young wife and mother, and she's trying to make ends meet while her husband is a prisoner somewhere. John doesn't mention in his description of the song where the man is, but because this is 1972, we pretty much assume that he's a POW in Vietnam. Because in the end chorus, too, he sings, Bring Me and the Other Boys Home. So it's an anti-war protest song, really. I like the pacing of it and the imagery of it a lot. I like how the 2 separate stories and separate melodies eventually come together and merge, the husband and wife's melody. It's brilliantly written, really. Give it another listen. Prisoners. Now, song Rocky Mountain High. What can you say about Rocky Mountain High? It's my very favorite John Denver song. Like I said, it's what hooked me onto this train. I had never been to Colorado. It'd be a long time before I got there, but boy, once John started singing about it, didn't you want to go there? Rocky Mountain High hit the top 40 charts in January 1973. Spent 14 weeks there. Life was good for all of us. Now, the second side of this album starts with Goodbye Again, and it's followed by the 5-part season suite, which, as the name suggests, features 1 tune for each season, plus a 5th one, a simply beautiful instrumental called Late Winter, Early Spring When Everybody Goes to Mexico. And while each portion celebrates nature, in the end, when we come around to spring, there's the environmental message. Do you care what's happening around you? Do your senses know the changes when they come? Can you see yourself reflected in the seasons? Can you understand the need to carry on? Again, another favorite song of mine that always brings this message home when I hear it. I just can't say anything more about that. And remember that art class that I did the Eagle and the Hawk for? Okay, well, for our final project back in 1976, we had to create a timed slide set featuring audio and visuals. Again, a lost art. Youngins, just think of PowerPoint, but instead of a computer, you've got little plastic slides in a carousel, and you've got them timed to music that you have put on a reel-to-reel tape, and you've put invisible pulses on the tape so that they magically advance the slides. It's a lost art. Anyway. My roommate Marge and I came up with something that I think we called Winter Fun, and we used 2 of John's selections from Season Suite. We put beautiful snow pictures to the instrumental Late Winter, Early Spring when everybody goes to Mexico, and then we followed it up with fun scenes, people playing in the snow, to the winter song on here. So we actually reversed the order as they actually appear on the album, so it was even trickier to finesse that recording. And I think we got an A on that one too. So thanks again, Marge, for going along with me, because I think that was probably my idea. In any event, Rocky Mountain High is the perfect album. The perfect songs in the perfect order. I love it just the way it is. So why would anybody want to tamper with it? I don't know. But when RCA made a cassette version of this album, they did indeed tamper with the original lineup. This cassette has just Season Suite on the second side, and then on the first side there are only 4 songs. Wait a minute, I told you there were 7 individual songs on here on the vinyl copy. Does that mean there are 3 missing on the cassette? Yes. Missing on this cassette. Well, let's go and tell you what's on the cassette. On the first side, it's Rocky Mountain High, Mother Nature's Son, Goodbye Again, and For Baby for Bobby. Boom. And then the second side is Season Suite, which means that if you like Darcy Farrow, Paradise, and Prisoners, you are out of luck. When I first got this tape long ago in the 80s or 90s, I wanted to drive around with this tape. So I just popped it into, I popped it into the car and I started driving around. When I got to the end of Season Suite, I thought, wait a minute, did I hear Prisoners? Did I miss it? How did I miss it? No, Prisoners not on here. And that's when I popped it out, looked at the case, looked at the cassette. Major bummer. I don't have the CD of this album. I really should, because it's one of my favorites. So I'm pretty sure, looking online, that the CD doesn't do this. The CD has the original lineup of the vinyl copy in the order that they were supposed to be in. And again, I'm sharing this story with you for the buyer beware warning. Did they think we weren't going to notice? Please, don't do this to me. Don't do this to me. How can you do such a terrible thing to a perfect album? Nevertheless, this wraps up my review of John's albums from 1971, 1972. I have a lot more to talk about, as I'm sure you know. I will take as much time as I need to go through album after album. So the next video, we'll start with Farewell Andromeda, one of my other favorites. So be sure to subscribe and like. Leave comments below. What are your favorite songs from these albums? Did you notice the difference in the formats between cassette and CD and vinyl? Let me know. Okay. So more programs to come. Be patient. It'll take me a while. But thanks for watching again. I'm Corinne Smith. I will see you next time.